For 11 seasons, Asa wasn't just a TV show, it was a cultural event. It beamed laughter into our living rooms while at the same time tackling the grim realities of war. This was a series that masterfully walked the tightrope between comedy and tragedy, creating a world inside the 4077th Mobile Army Surgical Hospital that felt astonishingly real. The characters weren't just faces on a screen, they felt like family. We knew their quirks, their heartaches, and their breaking points. The cast's chemistry was the show's lifeblood, a rare lightning-in-a-bottle mix of talent that made every episode feel like a reunion with old friends. The bonds felt so genuine, which is exactly why it was so jarring when some of the most beloved actors started vanishing from the 4077th. It started subtly, but then it became a pattern. One by one, key figures from the original lineup walked, away from a show that wasn't just a hit, but an absolute institution. These weren't side characters. They were pillars of the series, the personalities who had defined its iconic early years. Their exits left gaping holes in the show's fabric and left audiences at home feeling confused and heartbroken. Why would anyone leave a series at the peak of its popularity? Was it just about money, a shot at solo stardom, or was something deeper, more complicated, going on behind the scenes? The official stories were often neat and tidy, but the truth was a whole lot messier. From bitter contract disputes down to a single missing signature, to the emotional burnout of playing a cherished character, to the pride of an artist who felt their work was done. Today, we're uncovering the real reasons these actors left one of the most successful shows in television history. The story of Mies. is one of incredible success, but it's also a story of fracture and reinvention. The departures of McClane, Stevenson, Wayne Rogers, Larry Linville, and Gary Berghoff weren't just isolated incidents. They were a series of earthquakes that could have, and probably should have, ended the series. Instead, the show survived and even thrived, but not without leaving a trail of unanswered questions. Each actor's exit tells a unique story about the pressures of fame, the demands of art, and the personal cost of being part of a TV legend. So, let's go beyond the press releases and the sanitized Hollywood stories. Let's start with the first, and arguably most shocking, departure of them all. To understand the tremor caused by McClane Stevenson's exit, you have to understand the character he left behind. Lieutenant Colonel Henry Blake wasn't just the CO of the 4077th. He was its bewildered, big-hearted soul. He was a man completely out of his element, a civilian doctor dropped into a position of authority he never wanted and was hilariously unfit to handle. His office was a constant storm of chaos, with Hawkeye and Trapper buzzing in and out, Klinger scheming for a discharge, and Radar O'Reilly, his psychic company clerk, often seeming like the one really in charge. Stevenson gave Henry a clumsy, folksy charm that was impossible to resist. He was the permissive dad to Hawkeye and Trapper's antics, the guy who'd sigh, shake his head, and let them get away with it. Understanding their brand of chaos was a necessary medicine. His bond with Radar was especially touching. A mix of commander and dependent child, with Radar anticipating his every need and navigating the military red tape that baffled Henry. In short, he was beloved. McClane Stevenson, a gifted comedian, had found the role of a lifetime. So why on earth did he walk away? The answer is a complicated and ultimately tragic mix of ambition, ego, and bad advice. While there was reportedly no major tension with the cast, Stevenson grew frustrated with his spot in the ensemble. In the 1970s, TV was all about the leading star, and as Monaco exploded in popularity, it was clear Alan Alda's Hawkeye Pierce was the show's breakout star. The industry press started calling it Alan Alda's show, and the awards centered on Alda's performance. For Stevenson, who had originally wanted the role of Hawkeye, this was a tough pill to swallow. He felt his own work was being overlooked. Actress Loretta Swit, who played Margaret Houlihan, recalled him saying, "I know I will not be in anything as good as this show, but I have to leave and be number one." This drive to be number one was fueled by agents and executives at NBC, a rival network. They dangled a deal in front of him that was too good to pass up, a huge salary and the chance to headline his own show, with the glittering possibility of one day succeeding Johnny Carson on The Tonight Show. It was the classic Hollywood dream, and Stevenson, feeling restless, took the bait. He asked to be let out of his contract at the end of season 3. The producers, Larry Gelbart and Gene Reynolds, could have given Henry a simple transfer, leaving the door open for a guest spot. They chose to do something far more radical, something that would ensure Stevenson could never return and would change television forever. They decided to kill him. The episode, Abyssinia Henry, was a beautiful farewell. Henry gets his discharge and says his goodbyes. His final emotional hug with Radar felt like the perfect ending. But the writers kept a devastating final scene, secret, giving it to the cast just moments before filming to get their genuine reactions. In the show's last minute, a stunned Radar walks into the operating room and says, "Lieutenant Colonel Henry Blake's plane was shot down over the Sea of Japan. There were no survivors." The shock in that operating room was real. The gasp from the audience at home was just as real. In 1975, you just didn't kill off a main character on a hit sitcom. The network was flooded with angry letters, but the point was made. In war, goodbyes aren't always neat. The death of Henry Blake cemented May Achie's legacy as a show that would shatter its own comedy to deliver a dose of reality. Tragically, the stardom Stevenson craved never happened. His new shows failed quickly. He continued to work, but never reached the same heights. Years later, he admitted his regret with painful honesty. "I made the mistake of believing that people were enamored of McLean Stevenson. When they were enamored of Henry Blake, he realized too late that the magic wasn't just him. It was the entire 47th. He'd walked away from a once-in-a-lifetime partnership, a decision that haunted the rest of his career." If McLean Stevenson's story is about ambition and regret, Wayne Rogers's is about principle and frustration. His exit at the same time as Stevenson's was a 1-2 punch that could have easily knocked the series out. As Captain Trapper John McIntyre, Rogers was the other half of the show's chaotic heart. Linville himself was reportedly the opposite of his character, a kind professional. But after 5 seasons, his contract was up, and he turned down an offer to renew. His reason was simple, and one any artist can respect. He felt he had taken Frank Burns as far as he could go. By design, Frank was a one-dimensional character incapable of growth. That was his comedic purpose. But for Linville, playing the same note for 5 years had become draining. The character's story had flatlined. His main romantic interest, Margaret, had moved on and gotten married. With her gone, Frank was left as an island of pomposity. There were no new depths to explore. Linville famously quipped that Frank couldn't evolve. "What? You wanted him to become Alan Alda?" Moreover, the tone of "Maya Sa'i" was changing. It was shifting from a broad sitcom to a dramedy, and Frank's cartoonish villainy felt increasingly out of place. Linville saw this. His departure wasn't about ego, it was an act of artistic self-preservation. Frank's exit was as pathetic as the character himself. With no farewell episode, he was written out between seasons after suffering a mental breakdown over Margaret's marriage and getting transferred to a VA hospital. It was a fitting end for the man everyone loved to despise. Linville went on to a steady career as a guest actor, proving his versatility. But the most important result of his departure was the character who replaced Frank. The writers couldn't just bring in another buffoon. So they created Major Charles Emerson Winchester III. played by the brilliant David Ogden Stiers. Winchester was everything Frank was not, a highly skilled, sophisticated surgeon from Boston. He was Hawkeye's intellectual and surgical equal. Their conflict wasn't about incompetence, it was a clash of ideologies. This new dynamic elevated the entire series, allowing Moda Sae to complete its transformation from a great sitcom into a legendary piece of television drama. Of all the Yazzie departures, Gary Berghoff's was perhaps the most emotionally draining, both on and off screen. As Corporal Walter Radar O'Reilly, Berghoff was the soul of the 4077th. He was the only principal actor to also be in the original 1970 movie, making him the longest-serving resident of this fictional piece of Korea. Radar was our stand-in, the innocent Iowa farm boy in the middle of chaos, clinging to his teddy bear and grape sodas. His knack for anticipating his commander's needs and his gentle spirit made him the glue of the unit. For 7 seasons, Berghoff embodied this character. So perfectly it was hard to tell where the actor ended and Radar began. But underneath, the actor was struggling. Playing a character defined by innocence for nearly a decade took a profound emotional toll. Berghoff admitted that trying to live up to the public's perception of Radar was difficult. This feeling was compounded by a grueling TV schedule and personal problems at home. Berghoff's marriage was under strain, and the long work hours meant he was missing time with his young daughter. He was suffering from severe burnout and knew he had to leave for his own well-being. He later explained his decision simply, "I came to value my family above all else." The producers, knowing how vital Radar was, tried to persuade him to stay. Mike Farrell reportedly pointed to the faltering careers of past departees as a warning. But Berghoff's decision wasn't about ambition, it was about survival. He agreed to a special 2-part farewell episode at the start of Season 8 to give the character a proper send-off. That episode, Goodbye Radar, is one of the most poignant in the show's run. Radar receives a hardship discharge to go home after his uncle dies. The filming was emotionally charged as Berghoff's own personal struggles blurred with his character's farewell. His goodbyes were deeply moving. The tearful salute from Colonel Potter, Klinger's promise to make him proud as the new clerk, and Hawkeye discovering Radar's teddy bear left on his bunk as a final gift, it all marked the end of an era. With Radar's exit, the 4077th lost its last shred of innocence. Though he stepped away to focus on his family, wildlife painting, and jazz drumming, Berghoff did briefly return to the character, appearing in 2 episodes of the spin-off After MASH, to give Radar one final goodbye. The stories of why these 4 actors left Mess S are as varied as the show itself. For McLean Stevenson, it was the siren call of stardom that ended in regret. For Wayne Rogers, it was a principled stand for artistic respect that proved his shrewdness. For Larry Linville, it was the craftsman's decision to retire a character that had run its course. And for Gary Berghoff, it was a necessary act of self-preservation. Each departure was a body blow that could have been fatal to any other show. But Asa didn't just survive, it evolved. This resilience is a key part of its legacy. The creators brilliantly decided never to replace a character with a carbon copy. The bumbling Henry Blake was followed by the firm Colonel Potter, the freewheeling trapper. John was replaced by the devoted family man B.J. Honeycutt, and the cartoonish Frank Burns gave way to the formidable Charles Emerson Winchester III. These cast changes weren't liabilities. They were injections of new life. They created new dynamics, opened new storytelling avenues, and allowed the show to mature over its incredible 11-season run. The show's ability to absorb these losses and turn them into strengths is a testament to the genius of its writers. It proved that the true star of MASH wasn't any single actor, but the 4077th itself, a place of absurdity and anguish, of laughter and loss, that could endure even as familiar faces changed. The work of Stevenson, Rogers, Linville, and Berghoff was essential in building its foundation, but the show's ultimate triumph was its ability to say goodbye, again and again, and still find a reason to keep going. What are your favorite memories? From me, which era do you prefer? The early years with Henry and Trapper or the later seasons with Potter and Winchester? Let us know your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe for more deep dives into classic television.